Hey, a quick reminder that all our subscribers can get 15% off their tickets to Epic Web3 conference. And this conference is special because just like this podcast, it's focused exclusively on building and growing Web3 products. So among conference speakers are people who are responsible for building and growing products at POAP, MakerDAO, Polygon, MetaMask, Decentraland, Gnosis, and many, many more. The event will take place on the 9th of June in Lisbon, and the agenda is already out. You can check it at epicweb3.com. If you decide to buy a ticket, just remember to type Web3 Talks code during the checkout to get 15% off. Okay, and we are live. So today's guest is Matt Galligan, co-founder and CEO of XMTP. And as most people know, XMTP is a protocol for Web3 messaging. So first of all, you can integrate DMs, notifications, and alerts in your dApp. But XMTP is not limited to these Web2 style communications. You have also features like portable inbox, ENS integrations, and conditional deliverability. And although these might sound mysterious, we'll unpack them today for sure. Also, if you ever DM'd someone on Lenster, you probably used XMTP. So Matt, I know that you've been working on it since 2021, as far as I know. So could you tell us, why have you decided to build it?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been in and around the crypto space for a number of years, probably goes back to 2016, 2017. And back then I got really intrigued with NFTs and what the possibilities might end up being for them. And at the time it was, crypto punks and crypto kitties and very nascent examples of what they could be. But I knew that this idea of, say, ownership by way of my private keys, my wallet, things like that, digital ownership for scarce things, like provably scarce things, was fascinating. And we might see some interesting use cases for it. Fast forward to 2021 and you see an explosion of NFTs, lots of different projects, lots of different use cases for these NFTs. And crypto in general had matured a whole lot. You've got DeFi that really matured in just the summer prior. And so all over you have these new and interesting use cases that isn't just about, say, purely financial speculation. And when I was looking around at different, say, NFTs to play around with or get involved with, I started joining a bunch of, Clubhouse sessions. And in one of those, I heard Linkin Park's Mike Shinoda talking about what ownership meant for some of these assets, and hearing him talk about his experience with building the Linkin Park Facebook page and how they had put so much work into building this audience for them to one day kind of get rugged. And the algorithm changes and all of that work they had put into developing that audience eventually meant that they couldn't reach them the same way that they were able to before. And there was something special about this idea of, say, NFTs that as an artist I could issue, and no one can take that audience away from me. Whoever owns that is recorded there in the blockchain for all to see. But that missing piece that still wasn't yet there was the ability to communicate, say, directly with those owners of those assets. It's almost as though, you have a perfect ledger of everybody who owns or otherwise is interacting with something, but you cannot reach out to them. And it was also very apparent, like a buddy of mine, Robert Leshner, who at the time was working on getting the Compound protocol kind of, up and running. That would have been the summer prior, but by the time I talked to him, there were $10 billion in assets sitting in this smart contract. But it was so wild to hear that he has all of these users that are using this protocol, but he can't reach any of them say directly or natively with the addresses that he's aware of, and it's not like they're leaving their email addresses or anything like that to have additional communication. So over and over, I kept hearing these stories of how there was something that communication felt missing, an interaction, a use case, whatnot. Even my own attempt to get an ENS name, there was one that I was going after already owned, and I couldn't reach out to whoever owned that ENS name to try and negotiate buying something. So it was just over and over this kind of rhyming that I kept hearing in all of these use cases, that communication was the missing piece. And so from there, investigating it further just made me realize it's not about, say, connecting your wallet with your Web2 identity, because even that involves a lot of trust. And so much of the Web3 space is about trustlessness and ownership and all these things, that it felt like it needed to be a native capability, something where you just open up your wallet, you sign in, maybe you're on a DApp or whatnot, but you get right into messaging. And so that's really how this got started, was just this pure need of having communication. It's very fundamental to the internet. Imagine Web 1.0 without email, or Web 2.0 without IM or push notifications, and it's really hard to imagine. So that's what we're trying to bring to Web3 with XMTP.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with the problem. As it myself, I once did NFT drop, and I was so happy to have all these people who minted, and I was like, okay, now I gotta connect with them to tell them about the Telegram channel, and I'm like, okay, but how can I do it? So
yeah,
you can try on Etherscan chat, but no one checks that really. So
sure, yeah, it's a huge problem, and there's a lot of problems even to unpack inside of messaging alone. It sounds simple, but there's a lot to there's a lot that still needs to happen for messaging to be successful. So we've put a lot of work into a lot of different areas to see that it could be successful.
And how did the first version of XMTP look like? What were the early days? Because it's 2021. You understand the problem, you think about building a solution, and what happens next?
Yeah, I think the earliest days would have been going back and looking at things that had been built so far, some earlier iterations of communication and Web3 or crypto. And I mean, you saw things that might even be like an extra message attached to a transaction payload, so that you're communicating through transactions, but that's slow, and you've got to wait for all the confirmations. And then you've got the issue of they're all in the clear, they're not encrypted messages. And so that's a problem. And then, we've seen some other attempts at building messaging onto blockchains, maybe even faster blockchains, but there's also challenges there in, say, privacy, that you might be able to see who is messaging who because of the history being there, as well as some concerns about, hey, they're going to be in this chain forever, and so what does that mean for long-term security of your messages? There's just lots of things that I would boil down into just lots of learnings early on. We tried a bunch of different experiments for how to store messages and all of those kinds of things that really took until the earliest part of 2022 before we saw some meaningful iterations that would turn into what we see of XMTP today. And a core decision early on was to go protocol first, which is build the core asset, maybe some examples around it to see how it would work, but then work hand in hand with the developer community to see how it could be implemented and built into applications. And so the earliest iterations were very nascent. They were very simple, but we wanted to start off simple so that we could build something great in tandem with a developer community.
And how have you managed to get the first users for your MVPs and apps and developers to build and experiment with your protocol?
Well, as far as getting developers on board, we consider the developer experience to be paramount, and so documentation has to be great. The time that we spend with developers and hearing about what kinds of use cases they're looking to accomplish, all of that, it all goes into how we attract developers. Some of it is going to hackathons and just having boots on the ground and talking to every developer who will listen to us and learning more about those use cases from them and developing those relationships. And some of it is just good old BD and spending time talking to other projects and hearing their needs and building those things out. So, for a protocol like XMTP and a company like XMTP Labs, our chief concern is getting the protocol right and getting it in the hands of developers, because it's the developers who will build the apps that will bring the users. And so, one very key piece to this puzzle early on has been the integration of XMTP as the DM layer of the Lens protocol. So Lens being a decentralized social network, Web3 social kind of space where it's similar to Twitter. I can post things, I can comment, I can do all of that, but across many of the apps that use Lens protocol on the back end. Well, one thing that was missing from that experience compared to other Web2 social experiences was private messaging. And so last year, Lens adopted XMTP as their messaging protocol to send secure encrypted DMs via the same Lens profiles that they use in the rest of the platform, the protocol. And so what's been awesome to see then is that, it was deployed just on Lenster, in the very beginning, and then it was added to the Lens documentation. And now when you register a Lens profile, you get your messaging keys activated with XMTP, and it just it all starts to build on each other. But the benefit now being that when new Lens apps want to integrate messaging, all of my existing messages that I have on, say, Lenster, all go over to the new apps like Orb and Butterfly, and now simpler ones like Converse, which is kind of like iMessage for XMTP. But the point being that we're here to build an amazing developer experience that makes it crazy easy to get started in messaging, and then help to build out some of these natural networks that will form and improve that success. I mean, you want to message somebody, and if they're not there to be messaged, it's not a good interaction, right? But if we can help also onboard that network, that's a key piece of it too. So, and then this whole concept of the portable inbox, as you mentioned earlier, means that, I'm not jumping into silos. When I go to start messaging on one DApp like Lenster, and if I want to try out some new front end, I can do so without, having to go start my network all over again. And I have that freedom to kind of move about wherever I would like. And that's been great from a sense of user adoption, because, the effect compounds as they move from app to app.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I like is that these conversations follow your wallet in a sense,
yeah.
And I want to ask you about this Lenster integration, because it's been a huge success in a sense that everyone who uses Lenster has this free trial of XMTP. So if you're a developer and you use Lenster, you're like, okay, they use XMTP. I see that it works well, so I might also integrate that into my app. So I guess that integrating messaging protocol on Lenster might have not been the easiest deal to get, because I guess there were many parties interested in that. So I'm wondering, how have you made this partnership happen?
Yeah, I think that so much of it comes down to relationship building and understanding what various communities are in need of. Stani from Lens slash Aave has been, a great partner in the sense of having good conversation and kind of knowing what the broader ecosystem would need. And so when we saw, Lens picking up steam and thought, well, maybe there's an opportunity to help them out as far as messaging, it's a very different kind of thing to build than the protocol that they were working on. And that focus that we had, say, on user experience, on security, on privacy, all of those things really aligned well with the values that they had as a community, as well as interoperability. All of those things meant that it was an easy conversation. That, hey, you have this key building block, this puzzle piece that needs to be built out for Lens, and here we have it. For the most part, it was ready to go. There was a couple of tweaks that would benefit the Lens community as well as others eventually, and so building some of those capabilities was important to get the full support of Lens, but we did, and listened to their concerns and their features and their ideas, and have just built with them along the way. And sometimes, there's things that we learn about that need to be improved, and we just keep working with it. But it's really about finding that harmony of what we are able to provide, what we're able to build into the protocol, and what a community might need, and just, build that relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would like to dig in here because, like you said, that XMTP and messaging in general is not as easy as it might look like. So could you tell us, like, how does it work? Like, how does XMTP work?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one, in our world, you're using your wallet and your blockchain account, your Ethereum account, to act as your identity in this system, as opposed to, say, like an email address or whatnot. So if you go to any application that uses XMTP as its messaging layer, the first thing that you're doing is initiating your keys. That is because we're not using the wallet's keys to secure these messages. There's actually some additional keys that get generated, purpose-built for messaging. And so you get your account initiated, if you will, and so now your wallet address just has messaging capabilities. And from there, when you're messaging anyone else, the messages are then encrypted using those keys, and it's done so in a way that's similar to the Signal protocol. We consider that to be the gold standard of security, and so and privacy for that matter, and so always striving for getting better and better and better with that. But in the meantime, you go to send somebody a message. It's pretty simple. You punch in the address, and so long as they also have initiated those keys, then you're able to send that message. And that's why that network piece matters so much. Why, when you're on Lens and you get those keys, the more folks that sign up for Lens, the more folks can be messaged, and so on and so forth. But it's relatively simple if you're a user. Fire the app up, initiate your keys, punch in the address of whoever it is that you want to send a message to, and send. And from a developer standpoint, all of the heavy lifting of building for encryption and sending and all that kind of stuff is just handled by the SDK. It's very simple, which is why it's also a very attractive solution to get going with. And finally, that then goes into the XMTP network, which is currently operated by the company XMTP Labs, but we are currently working through the decentralization technology and process for how to distribute the storage of all of those messages to many, many, many parties, so that it is a truly decentralized and resilient network.
Yes, I was about to ask about it, so glad that you answered it before, because this is like super important, especially for such a crucial part as messaging, where
Totally.
yeah. So what were like the hardest trade-offs that you had to do in the early days?
Well, the trade-offs are always showing their head. It's like every decision that you make, there's some sort of trade-off that you are having to deal with, and that is especially true for decentralized technology because, you could start a project and build it without any sort of eye towards eventual decentralization, and everything is easier. Just literally every decision we've ever had to make would have been made easier if we would have done so without any consideration decentralization. So the trade-offs come constantly, and it's because we care deeply about decentralization as a pillar, security as a pillar, privacy as a pillar, as well as how we want to approach the developer community. So a couple would be one, we want to build this out as a protocol. We believe that messaging as a core feature of many apps, for that to work well, it has to be a protocol. It can't just be a widget, or it can't just be some centralized entity. It needs to be decentralized and permissionless. And it could have been a choice of ours to go and build, say, a first-class application and get started that way. And frankly, there's lots of great examples where that has worked well. But a trade-off we decided on early was that we really wanted to focus on building out the developer experience and seeing that this could be integrated in many different places. And developers might have felt like we were competing directly with them otherwise. And so to make that trade-off means that it takes a little while to get started, and we really have to work hard on those relationships. But so far, we've seen that pay off pretty well. And so hard trade-off to take on in the beginning, still hard because there's always this desire to build things, but we're really focused on the developer experience. And from there, it's things like, security and privacy. We don't want to compromise on, say, our security guarantees. And so we see, that as being paramount to so many other things. And we could make some choice to build out this feature. I can tell you that it's taken a while to get group chat built because to do group chat well is going to take time. There's a way to do it simpler and faster with less encryption or with, say, less guarantees, and it's easier. But that's not going to meet this standard that we have set. Privacy being similar, there's lots of ways to make the product easier, better, faster, but all of which might erode some of those privacy guarantees that we have too. So really, it's not just what did we have to figure out in the beginning. It's we are constantly being presented with challenges that result in trade-offs.
Yeah, you're definitely playing the long game here.
Yeah, in our opinion, it's important to do so. We're always keeping in mind how we can go faster and build more for the now, and just have that sheer execution, something that we're able to do as well. But we always have to keep the long term in our minds, because we're establishing these relationships. Even if we don't have, say, a direct one with the developer, they're still using the protocol, which means that they want to know that it's around, for a while, potentially forever. And we take that very seriously. So you can't just make flippant decisions or things that would, harm those relationships later on. You really have to be, considering that for a long time. And so we're always keeping those long-term decisions close at hand.
Hey, I got a message for you from our friends at Orange DAO. If you don't yet know, Orange DAO is a DAO built by founders who've gone through Y Combinator, and they focus on investing in and accelerating Web3 ecosystem. So the message is that their fellowship applications are open. What's their fellowship? Well, if you're a builder that has an initial idea, but feels like you need money or some mentoring to really pull it off, then this fellowship might be something for you. The way it works is they give you 25K, and for 10 weeks, you get mastermind meetings, dinners, and get tactical support from Orange DAO members and partners. So if you feel like it might be something for you and you want to turn your initial idea to full-time project, then go to fellowship.orangedao.xyz and see whether it's something for you. The applications deadline is 30th of June, so there's still plenty of time, but I highly advise you to not wait till the end because it might get pretty crowded. So thanks a lot, and we are returning to the episode. And I'd like to ask you about these Web3 native features because we covered portable inbox, so your chat inbox that follows you wherever you go. But there are also other features. So could you expand on that? I remember that I read your light paper and blog post, and I really found them fascinating because it's something really, really new.
Absolutely. And there are some things, say in the light paper, that are very aspirational. They're things that we wanted to do that may not have made it to the product yet. But then there are other examples of things that have come into the product that or that developers have done uniquely, building on the platform that have been fascinating. I mean, one, just the fact that you're using this on-chain identity secured with the wallet, that alone is pretty unique to Web3. When you use XMTP, you're not asking permission to, or you don't need our approval to grant some account to get started, like say in Web2, signing up with your email address. You just show up and bring your wallet and sign in, and that's very unique, that permissionlessness that we maybe sometimes take for granted in Web3, but for communication feels pretty powerful. The second is, because of that permissionlessness, you have an inbox that can follow you around from app to app. Imagine that you're using, say, WhatsApp today, and you know what? Telegram's got some better features that I want to go and play with. Well, that portability doesn't exist. I can't just pick up my inbox from WhatsApp and move it over to Telegram because it has a better interface. But that is something that you can do with XMTP, and that's because it's been enabled through those say on-chain identities and those wallets. And then you can start to get into say executing contracts like smart contracts, and we've seen examples where developers have built some complex flows into messaging. And so I'm just chatting with you, but then I want to send you say a proposal for a loan, like a personal loan. I can do so, and in the same interface, initiate that loan, and then you get a message that shows that you can take out that loan and get started, and it all can happen through a very succinct flow. But because it's all tied back to that identity, you have the security and the knowledge that that's authentic, which kind of gets into that last piece of things like phishing and trying to prevent scams that are currently kind of rampant in crypto. When you are interacting anywhere in crypto, you have to be hyper vigilant to know that the things that you're doing are not going to end up in you getting your wallet wiped or somebody stealing all of your assets. And if you're using something like Discord, you're very familiar with a message that's common whenever you join a server, which is, we will never DM you. And that's because there's concern that someone can spoof a server admin and get them to connect their wallet because they're claiming some special airdrop. And then next thing you know, that person gets their wallet drained. And so that property being brought to us by the wallet and the addresses and ownership of the property that wallet imbues in ownership means that when I connect my wallet, when I send you that message, when I sign for that account, for those to send those messages, you can inspect that. You can know that these messages came from that particular account. They wouldn't decrypt otherwise. Like, you can't forge this. They are real. They are authentic. And you can trust that whatever is kind of coming across a pipe at least, came from you. You might try to be phishing me, but hey, I can at least know that if someone's trying to spoof you, it's easier for me to investigate that. And that's why we, even at XMTP Labs, add in our ENS, so we have, hi.xmtp.eth or gm.xmtp.eth. And you're able to go to the ENS app and look up those addresses and know what addresses they map to. And if you figure out that somehow you're getting messages from an address that doesn't seem to match up, you can know you're being scammed. And that's very powerful. And it's something that Web3 uniquely enables.
I really like the example that you had, I think, in Light Paper or on blog post. I don't remember, but it was something like support.metamask.eth or like support.OpenSea.eth, that, when you see the message from this wallet, that, these wallets are owned by these entities and they are not these like fake support channels or fake Twitter accounts.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's something where if I were to go onto a website and try to message with somebody, I may not even know that is authentic. There are tons of examples where whole websites have been spoofed, and you might think that you're chatting with someone on that website, but you very well could not be. And so having the ability for a Web3 say company or protocol to set up some sort of support address and say, message us, and that I can use a client of my choice to send a message out to them and know that is an authentic communication, that's powerful. And we think that it could be a way for support to come into this ecosystem and have it be secure.
Mm-hmm. And could you tell us about this feature? I think it's still planned. Not sure whether it's live. This conditional deliverability, because this is something I found really interesting, especially given your example of NFT collections.
Yeah, the idea behind conditional deliverability is that when I want to send a message to an address, that there would be a check to see if I'm allowed to send that message. And that would largely be defined by whoever the recipient is. So if the recipient says, you need to own this set of NFTs to message me, then that's interesting, right? It puts the puts the control into the hands of whoever is receiving messages, and it's a powerful way to get to this consent mechanism around sending and receiving messages. That's something that we've seen implemented in sort of naive ways or very simple ways in a number of different front ends that use XMTP today. So we've seen token gated chat and things like that built directly in. It's a front end feature, but it shows just how powerful that feature can be. And if I'm using one of those clients, then the experience is no different, at least on the surface, of what it would be with this conditional deliverability fully baked into the protocol. So we're able to go out to the community, see these sort of rapid examples or these more simple ways of getting it done as proof that this is a powerful idea and something that should exist in the protocol. And so I'll be excited where, if eventually you'd be able to have, say, an event that you're running and you want to be able to send out a secret location of where to gather for that event. And, to get that location, you have to have a certain NFT, and all I have to send a message to is, event.xmtp.eth, and then I get back that special coordinate or location. That's interesting. And the idea that the protocol would be able to manage some of that consent is really powerful. It's hard to do, so it'll take some time. I'm just excited to see some of those concepts come to the forefront even sooner than later. Where developers, it's permissionless, they can go and develop anything they want on top of the protocol. So I'm excited to see what developers do that we might learn from that could then find its way into the protocol.
About exactly that, like what are the most interesting apps you've seen so far that used XMTP? Some most interesting use cases.
Yeah, there's quite a few, and they kind of range. One, I will say that it's very simple, but I love the Converse app right now. It's just basically iMessage, but over XMTP, and I love it because it's so dang simple, and it is exactly what I had hoped for when we got this started, that would come along and exist. Now, that's just mostly because, hey, it's like when you make any kind of food, you bake bread, right? You put the ingredients together and you put it in the oven, and out comes a loaf of bread, and you taste and you go, this is bread. I made bread. I did the same thing when I made homemade beer years ago, and you're just so shocked that what comes out the other side is this thing that seems correct. So it's cool to see an app like that. But then, totally outside of that, we've seen examples where there's a game going on, even as we speak, that is based on the Smurfs IP. So Smurf Society has a messaging-based like treasure hunt right now that's all taking place by interacting with and finding clues and all of this through this Smurf Society account. It's really, really cool. So I love the ingenuity there. We've seen some really creative examples where developers were using XMTP as truly as the transport protocol that's in the acronym, in the name. And that is really cool to see, because in this case, they just they built like a chess client where you're playing chess, but the moves are being transported over XMTP. And so when you, as the recipient, go and open this up, you're just seeing the chess pieces move around the screen, but it's actually XMTP that's kind of powering that communication of the game moves. There's a lot of possibilities for that. And lastly, one example is we've seen where a hackathon participant built a way to permissionlessly rent out compute time, and there's one part of that involved sharing a secret key that would then allow me to access that compute time. So I go ahead and send into a smart contract that I want to rent some time, and I get back as the message over XMTP, because it's encrypted, it's secure, and it's private, the corresponding key to make it happen. It was all seamless, and then all of a sudden I'm logged into that compute resource. It's so neat to see the variety of use cases, and why we believe it's so important to build XMTP in this way, because we don't know what people are going to build, and building it in a way that promotes that sort of permissionless innovation and creative thinking is a lot of the fun that we have here.
Yeah, one of the apps that I found intriguing was Wallet Roulette. So like chat roulette, but for wallets.
Yep, that's a fun one. And so just join and others join, and you get paired with somebody else and can start chatting. And it's interesting, but the things that they learned in building Wallet Roulette led them to then go build that Converse app that I've mentioned so much. Same developers, but that's why building these relationships with developers is so important. Here they were building a fun, creative, and simple experience, but in learning the platform through that experience, they went on to build what we see as now like a key part of the XMTP ecosystem, which is this beautiful app that makes it easy to chat with others on my phone, receives notifications, all of that. So it's neat to see how projects can evolve too.
Mm-hmm. So I have one question about this relationship and the whole onboarding, I might say, because like the obvious path is to integrate DMs via XMTP or like some other solutions to wallets. Like this is like the most obvious way, but we haven't seen that happen too much yet. So, why do you think, the wallets were hesitant to integrate DMs so far?
Well, first and foremost, just turning on messaging is not enough, and it's not enough to say, oh, you can send a message to another address now. It's like, okay, great. But why is that special? Why is that different? Why does the experience change because I'm doing it over this address as opposed to some, my email address or Web2 identity? And so it's a really big chicken and the egg problem where, what's going to come first? Do you add the capability or do you first try to work out, the things that actually make messaging valuable, the network, the interactions, the use cases, and then build in more places for those interactions to work? Key to how we have, built things out and what has been our strategy is, we care about the use cases above all else. It has to be useful. Just building a technology for technology's sake is not enough. You have to make it useful. So number one, make it useful. Number two, make it easy. Number three, make that network, do the work. Find a way to build a network where I'm having interaction success regularly. If those things are present, then that can attract wallets because now they want to participate in this ecosystem. Messaging presents an opportunity for, say, daily engagement with that wallet app. Where today I may not use my wallet app every day. I'm using it when I'm say trading assets or maybe if I'm logging into places, but it's rarely a daily use for me. But hey, if there's now activity happening in Web3 messaging, say by way of XMTP, now I have an incentive as a wallet to get that in there versus the other way around where, I build this feature out and now I have my work cut out for me to attract the use cases. Hey, we have built this, like now come. It just doesn't work that way. So we're excited to be doing work with some wallets, kind of learning about their needs, the kinds of things that they're wanting. And, I think that we'll see some wallets be integrating messaging solutions in Web3 this year.
Like fingers crossed, because I'm really longing for messaging in my wallet.
Totally.
Matt, like, let's say it's like 2030. Year 2030, how does Web3 messaging look?
Well, my hope is that we just call it decentralized messaging at that point because, we really believe that this is a technology that is important for everyone, not just those of us that are in Web3. And it's important because our security and our privacy of communication matters, that we're able to have private conversations is something that has existed since dawn of time. But, technology being what it is and how things are done today, all that communication, by and large, is owned or being controlled by a handful of companies around the world. And not only that, but you have governments who are very clearly showing that they would prefer to not have encryption or secure communication. I won't go into all the reasons why that's important for a well-functioning society, but having secure communication is important, number one, but doing it in a way where no one corporation controls that communication is important. When we see examples of, companies getting acquired and all of a sudden you have concentrated power that, hey, could just start reading messages. That's not awesome. And maybe I want to have the option of portability, and maybe I don't want to continue to use some app, or maybe an app gets banned in a country that I was using and relying on for my communication with my family. All of these things are examples why decentralization matters. So Web3 gets us the technology that brings us that, those private keys, those wallets, that ease of use around getting these identities spun up, and then the incentive mechanisms and distributed technology that's coming out of crypto and Web3 start to enable the network that can exist, that is truly decentralized and not owned by one company or corporation, and that resource can be distributed and self-sustaining. All of these things lead to a day where we're just using these rails as the means for communication. And we're no longer talking about Web3. It's just, hey, I use this messaging app, and it happens to use this kind of technology, but it's just how we communicate. That's something I'm really hoping we're able to achieve, and it's our North Star.
Yeah, I fully support that, because, I had a friend who worked at, one of these big tech companies. I cannot name the company, but like one of the biggest one. And she was in charge of this like moderating content, but also she could actually read people's DMs to see whether they, break law because they're like terrorists or whatever.
Yeah.
She obviously couldn't see like the names of people, but it's still very non-private, and she told me that very often the cases, because these cases were brought up to them by some algorithm, like very often they were not really serious. They were just like algorithm picking some random stuff. So yeah, this is pretty concerning, and I'm really vouching for your success here and making this vision happen.
Yeah, and there's always going to be examples of activity that would be less than desirable, on any kind of network, social network, messaging network. That also is something that is true kind of no matter the platform. But when you, say, take the ability away to have secure and private communication and conversations, the problem is that eventually, if you find yourself in maybe a country whose regime changes so dramatically that your own life is at risk because, maybe you practice a religion or a particular, sort of identity that has now since become persecuted, your life is at risk because of the communications that you've had. And so those examples are far more prevalent than malicious or nefarious activity that we see on some of these platforms. So it's, sort of my belief that it's very important that we see these technologies proliferate and get stronger, not weaker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Matt, you've been running this XMTP for 1.5 years, almost 2 years. So I'm wondering, what are the metrics and factors that you take into account when you measure whether you are on track?
Yeah, really, there's not a lot that we can track by design. We're not able to know, say, in a traditional sense, like, I don't know, how many people are successfully connecting with each other, or we see this person join and then all of a sudden they're having all these wonderful conversations with all these different accounts. We don't have the same level of granularity or even ability to get at that data. But we can know what we can see is, say, just general volume, know that there's more messages being sent, and we can start to know that we see more developers coming on board. We see those developers reporting that their integrations have been successful. The community is happy. and we can continue to listen to those factors because the developer community is the lifeblood of this project. It's how it will continue to gain traction. It's how it will continue to develop and evolve. And so, developer happiness is a very important metric that we are keeping track of.
Okay, and do you track it in any particular manner? Like, do you do like NPS, or is it more like qualitative? Like, you have a lot of conversations and just see, whether they are optimistic about XMTP.
Yeah, I mean, it's keeping the pulse. It's us, watching how things are going in our Discord. It's counting how many projects are integrating. Over 300 developers have built something with XMTP at this point, and so it's just watching how those things are going, qualitative and quantitative.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and Matt, like, what has been something that surprised you when you built this project? Because you started with some initial set of hypotheses, some idea like how the messaging look like, how the user needs look like, and so on and so forth. So wondering, like, what has surprised you so far?
What has surprised me is just how many times developers show up with a fully baked, say, example of XMTP in their application. This permissionlessness isn't just about, say, the users coming on board. It's the fact that a developer can come to the XMTP website, say, download the SDK, get started, don't even have to register an API key like they do in so many other cases. They just get started. And we've seen countless examples where they've brought to us, hey, look at what we built, and we're blown away by the quality, the ingenuity, any of these things. And that's something that is truly unique to this space, where no one has to come along and ask for permission to get started. And you don't even really know that this integration's happening, and all of a sudden it exists, and it's awesome, and it can be celebrated, and that's just so neat. So that's been something I've really enjoyed.
Yeah, I can imagine, because for me, like, since I joined the space, this permissionless is something that I kind of like got accustomed to, but it gets really fascinating when you are close to one project and just see how many apps just get created randomly.
Totally. Yeah, it's awesome to see. We love it.
So, Matt, like, we'll get to the last few questions, and one of them is the important one, which is, like, if you had a magic wand and could fix one thing about Web3, what would you fix?
I would probably fix the UX around, let's just say, I can maybe simplify it to just key management. But in large part, there's a lot of the UX of Web3 and of crypto that is hard and intimidating. And as a user, I'm a power user of technology. I am, pretty dang seasoned in my nearly 20 years of being a power user of everything that I use. And I still find some things in crypto and Web3 challenging sometimes. So I can only imagine, trying to present something to my mom to try to use, how difficult that is. And so the future of Web3 hinges on its ability to grow in the world and in its use and its usefulness. And the only way that we get there is more people being able to experience the products. And the only way that happens is if these things get easier. So I would love to snap my fingers and just see that this is a whole lot easier to use.
Okay. And, if you were not building XMTP, what would you build?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'm always thinking about new things and new ideas and stuff like that. I'm particularly fascinated with some of the things going on in AI right now. I'm sort of a technology optimist. really always kind of thinking about, hey, what's the best way this could happen. We could talk, all day long about the negatives of AI and how they make things scary. But if AI could improve education, I have been able to start to learn to code, and not just code, but program, build programs. And, I have been able to do that because I've been asking ChatGPT questions. And that's a whole different way to be educated than before. Very personal. And I think there's a future there. And, not only that, but ways to unlock one's own creativity. It's like, have a vision for something, like in, making our own wedding invitations. I had a vision for what I wanted to see, and something that would have taken a lot of rounds with a designer. And I'm a designer too. So it would have taken me a whole lot of time, and there were just certain things that I didn't know how to do. And, pairing with an AI and getting somewhere as a new creative tool, there's so much to be done in, augmenting our own abilities with AI. I'm excited about everything going on there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too. Like, I'm sometimes concerned about the AI, but like, as you said, this education part, like for me, I know how to code in Python, but I was taking part in a hackathon at ETH Denver, and
yeah.
I was about to be, to do design and marketing for a project, but it turned out that there wasn't enough time for my co-founder, who was responsible for backend, and he said, "Look, you need to do frontend as well." And I'm like, "But I've never did any frontend." He's like, "Okay, like we need to solve it." So I just learned with ChatGPT how to do this like Next.js app, and
yeah,
I built it. It worked, and it was really fascinating way of learning.
It's awesome. Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah. So, Matt, like, where people can learn more about XMTP?
XMTP.org is a great resource. It's got all the documentation and resources to know what to communicate and connect with the community. Definitely go check out XMTP.org. And then if you want to experience the product, XMTP.chat, that's an example client that's been built, that is, all on the same Rails and protocol that any other app that is built is using.
Okay. And, since we had a conversation about building a product, wondering if you have any other builders that that might be a good fit for the conversation that we had.
It's a great question. There's quite a few folks doing interesting things out there and building interesting things. I think anyone that is in around, say, the identity side of the space is great. Projects that come to mind would be like Spruce ID to some degree, the Ceramic Network folks, as well as some of the interesting tech around like Polygon ID and using zero knowledge proofs for identity. That's the kind of stuff I really jam out on that. It's really cool stuff.
Okay. So, Matt, thanks a lot for coming. Thanks a lot for sharing the story, the vision, and the details of XMTP. I highly encourage everyone here who's listening to try it out. I tried it via Lenster, and I really enjoyed it. It was super seamless experience, and just go to xmtp.org, see how it works, and maybe build something with that if you find it interesting.
Please do. Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot.